Welcome, fellow storm riders. This hypnotic storm has become a typhoon, but the sort that only sweeps away disastrous scripts, poor training, and that deeply personal itching everywhere. Welcome to Brain Software, episode 71 with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. He's freshly discovered goblet squats, has been adding yoga to his wellness routine,
I love it,
and is now fully recovered from the most recent Architecture of Hypnosis course in Toronto. Please welcome to the center of the Hypnotagon, the man who is richly determined to track down Gus Grissom once and for all. Here he is, Mike Mandel.
Thank you, Christopher. Welcome all of you, all and sundry. Yes, it has been a fantastic time. Architecture of Hypnosis finished 1 week ago today.
Yes.
And what a wonderful group of people we had, Chris. You think of that group, we had Spain, 2 from Singapore. Where else? France, England.
United States, France.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
Just an amazing group. The original plan was, you know, we would have a few people from Southern Ontario, which is what I used to get. But Chris here has said, if you build it, they will come. And we have built Toronto as the very epicenter of world hypnosis, and people are showing up here.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting things that happened over the last few years. One is that we started this podcast, and at the time we started it years ago, I wasn't even running the class with you. You were still running it through another organization.
Which shall not be named.
More people came because they listened to the podcast. And then we set up the online Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy.
We thought that was going to be what was going to be drawing students, but we didn't know it would do the opposite. It would bring in more live people.
Yeah, and I think this is an important point for people to consider. When you're doing something, when you're creating some sort of project that's marketing-centric or business-building-centric or whatever, we thought, okay, well, we'll set up the Architecture of Hypnosis for the live training, and we'll set up the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy for the online training for the people who can't come to Toronto, maybe can't afford the time off work or the travel expenses or all that. We didn't anticipate it would actually cause more demand for the live class. So
it's been incredible, Chris. As I said, we just had our 3rd student who came all the way from Singapore.
Yes.
So we had 2 medical doctors, one being a psychiatrist. We had medical doctors from Victoria, British Columbia, and a Toronto emergency ward doctor who was just fantastic. And it's great. We're drawing these really skilled people who are now applying it in their practice. So if you're a medico, you're a professional healer, come and study with us. We have one more course coming up this year, which will be in November, because June is already sold out.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, how can we turn this into an empowering question for people? So if you are running a business or doing something in your life, how can you change the way you're thinking about a project that you're currently working on and serve even more people as a result of it?
Oh, nice. Even more people. Yeah, it comes back on you.
So think about that. Now, we had some amazing students.
That wasn't
we talked
the empowering
about.
question, though.
No, we will.
That.
Yeah, we will obviously have another. Whoa!
Whoa! We'll
edit that out.
Yeah.
We haven't used that line in a while, have we? Okay.
Well, we have. We've been editing it out. We now have to edit that out.
Oh no! Meta-analysis of editing.
Oh no! F1, F2, F3.
So Mike, let's talk about people, because one of the things
behind their backs.
Yeah, of course, the best kind of talking about people in a good way behind their backs, right? So we're doing it behind their backs, but we're recording it. We're going to put it out to the world, so in front of those who actually stick their earbuds in their ears to listen to this wonderful podcast. But every single time that we run a live class, it seems, I joked to our list. I said in an email, we rediscover how caring for people alone makes profound changes start to happen in their lives.
Bro, that is true. You know, and I see this as part of the whole Grinder model of building rapport, where John Grinder taught me that if you want to build rapport at the highest level, you don't even have to work on the matching and mirroring and all of these things, matching their speech predicates and body gestures and spinal tilt and all these things. If you focus on making the other person in your mind the most wonderful, fascinating, interesting person you've ever met, all the other things will fall into place. You'll build the other rapport skills automatically just by continuing to imagine that person is fascinating. Then, if you map that over even further and discover that the other person is of worth and value and treat them with care and concern, then it just goes off the scale, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, is you have your imagine that they're the most fascinating person model, and that works to highlight your own, get you into the correct state, that ego state, to be really interested and therefore
empathic.
Right, you're gonna be more intuitive. Your calibration skills are going to be better. You're going to deliver better value. But if you, at a higher level than that, truly care about helping other people, then it almost doesn't matter. Let's say for those of you listening and you don't have yet particular skill sets in influence or persuasion, or you don't know how to use double binds or presuppositions, or you don't know how to tell stories and captivate people. If you just start by really caring, you'll make profound shifts in the direction of their life.
Yep, absolutely, Chris. And, guys, we joke so much on this stupid podcast and we say ridiculous things, but we really do care. And when people come in and take the course...
Hey, are you just kidding about that?
No. And people come and take the course and study with us. We want to make that point. We are thrilled when everybody out there, whether you're a live student or someone we never ever meet, you just listen to the podcast, when you apply this stuff and make a change in your life and someone else's life, a positive shift, we are thrilled for you.
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason why we keep the class sizes small, because we just don't feel that it's going to be as easy or as effective to build a great relationship with way more people. But all right, let's move on though. I want to move into our focus points for the podcast here. And before we do, we have to quickly mention we are heading to Las Vegas, and that is August 2016 this year. We're going to Las Vegas. The dates are the 26th, 27th, and 28th of August, as I said.
That would be in the month of August.
Yeah, I think so, yes. And, we're doing August 25th, we're doing a Mindscaping pre-conference event. This is part of the HypnoThoughts Live conference. And if you want details on it and find out how you can attend our one-day training in Mindscaping for no money, you have to be our student first by purchasing our digital course, but then we can get you a discount on the tickets. Go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/HTLive2016. That's all lowercase for HTLive2016. And check it out. And we've got a ton of people already registered for the class, which is amazing.
It's going to be a blast. And we hang out together in Vegas. And there's some great trainers. Scott Sandlin and his partner do an amazing job in setting up the best hypnosis conference in the world. It's a regular thing for us now. We wouldn't miss it for the world. Let me just say, too, Chris, for those of you who have our Mindscaping product, you'll discover we have just added
five new videos,
5 new advanced Mindscaping videos, which are free to you, and they're all in your library. They're online.
They're awesome. Yeah, we're making the course even better. We're committed with everything we do, including the MMHA, the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. We're going to keep adding material to it, making it better and better. And we have some cool stuff coming up, which we're not going to say for the next month or so, that is going to make the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy an absolute effing no-brainer, if I do say so myself.
I don't know if you can say no-brainer.
It's going to be such an obvious thing that anyone is going to want. If you're interested in hypnosis, we're going to make it so compelling within the next month that I think you'll just have an impossible time saying no to it. So that's the idea. And that's going to lead us into our topic of this podcast, which is regression versus direct suggestion in hypnosis.
Great topic, Chris. And there's so much here for those of you who are professional hypnotists or hypnotherapists, you're professional therapists of any kind, or those of you who are using hypnosis for whatever reason. It's important to know about these things. And when Bernheim and Lebo were doing their work in Nancy, France in the 1800s, late 1800s, they were using DSIH all the time, which is direct suggestion in hypnosis. And what this basically means is you put someone in the most powerful trance you can, and then you just give them positive suggestions. So let's say the person had sciatic nerve problems, sciatica, which is what Lebo originally fixed. One of Bernheim's neurological patients had terrible sciatica. Lebo fixed it. Bernheim was outraged and was amazed at the same time and partnered with Lebo, and they became the Nancy School. They would be doing direct suggestion. So they'd be saying things like, your leg feels better. That discomfort you had is fading. You feel good. You feel just direct suggestion, bombarding the problem.
There's no metaphor. It's not talking about how that tomato plant can grow and just become so healthy and all the nutrients get delivered to the correct spot.
That's good, Milton Erickson.
There's none of that.
It says like you copying me, copying James, copying Milton Erickson.
So if you were to break down the whole session, it's essentially once your pre-talk's done, induced trance. Let's say Dave Ellman induction.
Sure, whatever.
Get to somnambulation.
Induction. Get to somnambulism, deep in trance. Just layer on the positive suggestions. You will get a result. And, because there are some people, really good people out there who specialize in regression work and then parts therapy, I won't name anyone, but there's a danger in they completely throw out DSIH as a result of that, the direct suggestion hypnosis. They only want to use parts therapy and they only want to use regression. But there are some things that will respond, as Bernheim and Lebo proved, 150 years ago, almost 150 years ago, there are some things that will respond wonderfully to direct suggestion. Now, remember, when you are formulating your suggestions, it's crucial to do them properly. So if you're using direct suggestion, get the subject in a good trance state first. Say your suggestion in the positive. So you're not going to say, you won't have insomnia anymore.
I was just going to say
you
insomnia.
You won't lie awake staring at the ceiling all night.
That is so weird, Mike. I was actually going to suggest that you use insomnia as the subject.
I caused you to think of that. So, and you don't want to say, you won't have nightmares. You won't lie awake staring at the ceiling. You won't feel terrible tossing and turning all night. Tell them what will happen.
You won't lie in bed feeling wide awake and alert.
Yeah. So you want to use suggestion that is dealing with the situation by accentuating the positive. So instead, in that case, you'd be saying a suggestion not only in the positive, but you want to repeat it. And you want to say it different ways. So, and keep it simple. Mm-hmm. This is not time to use flowery language. If you have someone in a somnambulistic trance, which I'm assuming you will, because that's where my students put people. If you have someone in a somnambulistic trance, keep it simple. You don't have to say, and the perfection of the moment as you gaze upon this watch that swings in front of the visage of your... No, it's just... Make it real simple. You will sleep well tonight. It's the beginning of a good night's sleep, night after night. You will feel fantastic when you awaken. You will be well rested. Your dreams will be pleasant. Your sleep will be restful and restorative. Simple. Hit from many angles and repeated. Now, when we say repeated, don't fall into that horrific mistake of being mechanistic. You'll sleep well tonight, you'll sleep well tonight, you'll sleep well tonight. You'll sleep through the night, you'll sleep through the night, you'll sleep through the night. I've heard a stage hypnotist default to this. You're getting very tired this evening, very sleepy tonight. Very sleepy this evening, very tired tonight. Very tired this evening, over and over. Just rote repetition. And of course, one hypnotherapist or teacher uses a method where he repeats the suggestion a minimum of 15 times. Yeah. And sometimes we'll have a tape to play it. And notice the tremendous restraint I'm showing, Chris, because champing at the bit as, the very Hickson Gracie of hypnosis that I am, and still not going after these people. The restraint is just freaking admirable.
Yeah, you've gotten nicer. Yeah.
I'm getting older. I don't get die
I wanted to also suggest that this stuff... You can learn always by relating back to things you already understand. And
Beautiful.
So if you think of a conversation... If you have a conversation with someone and you want to be very direct, then you say what you want, right? And you don't say it in all kinds of flowery words, and you don't say what you don't want.
Right. Say what you do want.
What would you like for dinner? Let's say you're at a restaurant. Waitress comes up to you. Can I take your order? And you say, well, I don't want the hamburger. Yeah. Okay, so now what are you going to get, right? There's your whole keep it positive. Say what you do want. I want the hamburger. Please leave off the bun. That's very specific, right?
Right.
What else? So the whole idea of repeating
about pain,
things.
though, and pain. Remember, we're saying with pain, you don't use the word pain. It's a painted word. So you don't say, you will not feel that horrific agony anymore. No.
Yeah, there you've just violated two things.
Say that pressure, that discomfort.
Right. You're going to feel amazing. If you're... we won't beat this one to death, but keep it. So direct suggestion. Let's talk about insomnia. Let's just layer back and forth a few different ways of wording direct suggestions to people. So you're going to sleep well tonight.
Yeah, you'll sleep peacefully.
You'll awake feeling wide alert in the morning at the appropriate time for you.
Your sleep will restore you.
You'll fall asleep easily at night.
Your dreams will be pleasant.
There you go. Okay.
You won't lie awake staring at that.
Yeah. So that is direct suggestion. Mike, I don't know about you. I use this every single time I put a client into
And
trance.
why not? Why not? Because direct suggestion works. Now, listen, for those of you out there who are thinking in terms of, oh, yes, but, there's often initial sensitizing events, and you have to regress. We're getting there. We do not deny the efficacy of regressing people to a specific event. Mm-hmm. We're simply saying that direct suggestion in hypnosis is getting sort of a bad rap now. Of course, the pendulum swings back and forth and back and forth. We want our students to have a full box of tools so you can use all of it.
Yes, and when I say that I use direct suggestion in hypnosis every single time, I don't mean that that's all I do, right?
No, of course not. You're going to layer it in, though.
Exactly. I will typically use guided imagery or metaphor, embedded commands, all kinds of things. And I tend to favor using direct hypnosis in trance. Sorry, direct hypnosis in trance. I just said that.
I'm just sitting here staring, baffled, yeah.
Don't slip into a deep trance.
Right, I'll try not to.
a direct suggestion in hypnosis towards the end of the session when the client is at the deepest point.
Right, and why not? Now, let's go back to, but if there is an initial sensitizing event,
right,
which is somewhere in the client's past, in their personal history, something has happened that is traumatic in some way. It could have caused grief, sadness, fear, anger, sadness, trauma, the usual list of nasty things that we all go through.
Right.
With some people, this is like a thorn that's stuck in them. And unless you remove the thorn, they're not going to get better no matter what you do. It's like suturing a wound on top of shrapnel. It's not a good idea. You want to clean out the wound and then suture it shut, put the stitches in. So you have to find that initial sensitizing event. And what I find interesting is it sometimes hides behind an activating event. So you take, somebody has a fear of snakes. The example I used in our class the other day was someone has a fear of snakes and they say, oh, but I remember when it started. I was 14 years old and I was at a family cottage and my brother threw a rubber snake at me.
And screamed.
I got scared. Now, because the person was 14 years old when they say this happened, that would not be when the phobia installed. My experience verifies that all phobias start before age 7 and almost always before age 4. So this may have been the activating event. So if I take the person back and regress them to being at the cottage and having them relive the experience and fire out the negative emotions through abreaction or processing it externally and watching through dissociation, the person runs this through until it's gone, the negative emotions are gone, bring them back and find out they still got the phobia or they still have some nagging fear. It's because you did not get to the initial sensitizing event, which is still unconscious. You've got to get back to that. The activating event is what causes the phobia. So then you take the person further back, and you find, by following the effect bridge, the feeling, the bad feeling. When did you first get that feeling? Well, first you're going to amplify it. Get the bad feeling as high as you can because you're going to put the person in the right ego state, bring that to the executive. Now follow that effect bridge. Follow that bad feeling back to the very first time you felt it. And this will often, if not most of the time, be the initial sensitizing event. So they find out it wasn't the brother throwing the rubber snake. It was, fishing, and they were putting a worm on a fish hook with their dad at age 5, and it fell off the hook and landed in the lap and scared them.
Yeah, I was just
and
thinking
that becomes
exactly
the initial sensitizing event. Sensitizing event does not cause a phobia, but I say the ISE creates a platform that the phobia then builds upon when there's an activating event.
The key point here being that the initial sensitizing event in the person's mind has some similarity, shares something similar with, so the snake phobia, snakes are slimy and slippery or whatever, they look that way if you don't touch them every day.
But when you say similar, realize too, Chris, we're only talking about similar to the unconscious.
Yeah, exactly.
It may be a stretch to find it consciously. Remember, I had that fear of high ceilings, but all my life I couldn't walk in a cathedral without having a panic attack.
Here's what I mean by it. It's only obvious that it's connected once you understand the bridge. Then you look back and go,
of course.
Your initial sensitizing event was this feeling of slipping as a 4-year-old down this wet grass on a little hill towards
maybe even
a pond,
younger. I thought,
like
but
that.
I thought the initial sensitizing event, which was actually the activating event, I remembered being in a church in England, an Anglican church, and the vicar doing a baptism of a little girl my mom was holding in a christening thing, and there was water on the floor from the baptism. The baby was screaming her head off. It was echoing in this vaulted ceiling of St. Wilfrid's Church, Lancashire, that my unconscious showed me which one it was. But it didn't go away when I found that. It reduced it. But my unconscious took it further back, and like you said, I was maybe 3, 4, probably 3, and I was walking on a little hill, slipped on long, slippery grass. I was walking towards a pond to see if there were any fish in it. And I was hanging onto the grass, screaming that was wet and slippery, thinking I was going to slide into the pond and drown. And it was the slipperiness and the wetness tied in with the wetness on the floor and thinking I was going to fall.
And perhaps even your own screaming, too, right? So wetness, slipping, screaming, whatever.
The screaming was that mapped across, right.
In retrospect, it makes complete sense that there's a connection, but if you just looked at the two and didn't know that there was a connection, you might not draw the assumption
you might miss
that there was one.
But the point is the unconscious knows there's a connection, and when you have that shrapnel in the wound syndrome, you've got to take the subject back to the initial sensitizing event, and we do that. And we either abreact it or have the person reduce it through one of the various tapping regimens or whatever.
Your shrapnel metaphor is a really good one. It's Such an easy thing to understand. So when you get to the initial sensitizing event, just seeing it through the eyes of an adult.
And running it several times through the eyes of an adult will actualize it and process it and strip the negative emotions.
Right.
Or you can run it backwards.
And when you say run it several times, what you mean is, so you regress the person to that first time they felt that feeling, which gets them to the initial sensitizing event, and just ask them in their mind to run from start to finish through the event, right?
Right. Or you can run it backwards doing the NLP fast phobia curve. The key is when you're running these events, as Griffin and Tyrrell, Human Givens Theory, so brilliantly point out, you've got to get the person as relaxed as possible. And that's a perfect place in hypnosis. Anyway, it's easy to do.
And every time you run it, it's like you're pulling out a piece of that shrapnel, right?
Yeah, that's
Which
nice.
you didn't know was there. So
Right.
here was this shrapnel that was causing this injury and this pain.
And now all of a sudden it's gone.
Somebody has pointed to it and said, hey, this is why you're in pain.
Right.
Take these pieces out. And every time you take a piece out, i.e. run through the experience, through the eyes of an adult, you depotentiate the emotions.
Depotentiate it,
right?
yeah. And it's important. If you're going to abreact it and have the person discharge the emotion, if you're not skilled at this and you're not trained in it, I don't recommend you do it. It can be scary. It's not harmful, but it's scary. They're running the emotions.
Absolutely. Okay, so we wanted to also touch quickly on idiomotor signals as one way that you can do this, right?
I recommend the work of Leslie Lecron and David Cheek, MD. Idiomotor signals are using finger signals unconsciously to talk to the unconscious mind. So you can set up a yes and a no finger, or you can do a yes, no, and I don't want to answer that right now or yet. That gives the unconscious an opportunity to say it doesn't want to answer without faking an answer. I don't believe in going the route of some people. Yes, no, don't want to answer yet. Tell you next Tuesday. Maybe, maybe not. Don't know the answer. Well, the unconscious always knows the answer at some level. But if you get a yes, a no, and don't want to answer yet, you'll be able to run idiomotor signals. And the power of these, Chris, is twofold. First of all, you can do idiomotor signals in a very light trance. In fact, you'll get a light trance just by running them, like in NLP parts therapy. Or you can have the person in a very deep trance and still get an amazing result with it. It's much easier to move finger signals than to speak. As soon as you start speaking, you begin activating the left brain again, which is bringing in language, which is going to likely start to bring the person out of trance unless they're somnambulistic. So it's a great way of getting to information that is hidden. And it's a great way. The second thing is of running the event unconsciously. So we were doing this in Architecture of Hypnosis, taking someone back to an event and having them run it unconsciously several times, giving finger signals at the start and the end of the event. And each time you're doing it, you're bringing it closer to the surface. This is something they may not remember at all. And you're depotentiating the negative emotion. And then after 3 or 4 times, you say, is your unconscious prepared to let you know this now consciously? If you get a yes signal, then they can run it consciously and get rid of the last of the emotion.
Right. It's very effective. It's very cool to watch people go through this. And as you're calibrating, either as an observer or as the hypnotist, or in case you're the hypnotist, you're also observing it. You're able to see these amazing shifts going on in the person's physiology.
You did some idiomotor work just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I was working on a guy who had claustrophobia, and it turns out that it wasn't really a simple case of not liking small spaces. It was really an issue of wanting to be in control and having predictability in life. So this gentleman had I won't go into the details, but he had an experience where, not through any of his own doing, he was in an enclosed environment, but couldn't get out on his own, and that's what led.
Was this at early childhood?
This was in the 30s. So this was actually the activating event.
Okay,
right? And so you have to go back and get to the initial sensitizing event and clear that up. I used idiomotor signals to run through the whole process unconsciously.
So he didn't know it at all.
That's right. Then bring it to conscious awareness.
Right.
And then the test was also, is it something you want to verbalize? And it wasn't.
Okay.
This was willing to be consciously revealed to the subject, but not
didn't
something
want to talk about
exactly,
it.
not something he wanted to speak about. So it's a very effective method, and of course, using that, then using direct suggestion in hypnosis,
cementing all the results,
install the changes, and from now on, you're going to be comfortable being able to give up small amounts of control for the benefit of the large-scale control of the aspects of your life that you really want to be able to control. So, for example, if you want to be able to get on a plane and not feel a freak-out response because, hey, I can't get off of this plane, the doors are closed, But you do want, let's say, the larger aspect of control in your life, which is to be able to take cool trips.
Yes, right.
So you have to throw that kind of stuff at people, either through metaphor, imagery, or just direct suggestions.
Right, and ego strengthening at the end is always part of our methodology to make the person feel better and feel confident. And we do not build dependency, we build independence and resources in our subjects. And Chris, that was such a good one. We're going to let that be our metaphor today.
Okay.
And let's go to the empowering question.
Okay, the empowering question for today's podcast is, what is your greatest talent, and how are you going to use it to overcome your greatest weakness?
Wow, let's have that one again.
What is your greatest talent, and how are you going to use it to overcome your greatest weakness?
Make sure you use these empowering questions, guys. They will focus your brain. They'll focus your reticular activating system and get you moving forward again. Use them and see what your unconscious mind comes up with when you ask yourself these questions. What's next, Chris?
Okay, so we're going to close out, and before we do, we want to talk about the Architecture of Hypnosis class coming up in June, which is sold out.
Excellent.
But just in case I get this published and they're before the event, and there are a couple of last-minute cancellations, because sometimes people run into travel problems or health problems or whatever it is. Not that we wish that upon anyone. We hope everyone shows up safely and in good health, but if anyone cancels, just let us know if you need to be on the waiting list. That's June 13th through 17th here in Toronto, and we've announced, or we have finalized, we haven't publicly announced, so this is now our public announcement of the November 2016 class.
People have been asking about this. So what are the dates?
It's going to be November 14th through the 18th, which is a Monday through Friday, as usual. And
St. Michael's College, University of Toronto.
Right. Very important change here, though, is that the November class for 2016 will be the last class where we include the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy in the price. So traditionally we have been, or at least for a while now, we've been giving people lifetime accounts to the academy, the online academy.
But we've come to our senses.
Yeah, well, we're still going to make it an amazing deal, and people will get a tremendous bargain on the academy, but it will not be included for free after this year's classes.
Okay. So if you want to get the online stuff too, book for November and come out and study with us in Toronto, the Hypnotic World Epicenter, and have an absolute blast. Next. Chris, I wanted to talk to you about the whole concept about not denying something. Because I remember you went through a thing with your daughter, Clemnestrata, about this.
I love how you make up names. For personal privacy, we don't use necessarily full names of kids and stuff. I might just make something.
His two lovely daughters, Clemnestrata and Synecdoche.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, yeah, so let's talk about this. Remember probably a few years ago,
yes,
you and I were talking, and you were explaining to me the importance of if you deny something,
it draws attention
you draw attention to the fact that it's possibly true, not untrue. If you say, I am not I don't know, make it up. I am not a Martian.
No, let me give you an example. A friend of mine who's since passed away was on a TV show with this guy, and he wanted to make him look bad. There was a debate going on. And he said to him, all I want you to do is turn towards that camera there and tell everyone at home that you do not sacrifice babies to Satan. And the guy said, what? And he said, just do it. Just look into that camera and tell everyone you do not sacrifice babies to Satan. He said, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
He said, then why will you not tell? It just nailed him to the wall. All anybody remembers, whether
he's caught in a double bind now.
Of course. Yeah. Whether he says I do not sacrifice babies to Satan, so he's denying it.
Yeah.
Or whether he refuses to answer.
Yeah.
All anybody remembers that this guy is somehow connected with sacrificing babies to Satan.
Exactly. So my daughter and I were driving into Toronto, and it was just the two of us, and we were having a nice conversation. So she was talking to me about her school life and friends and all this stuff. And it came up that one kid was being really bossy. And so she went up to this kid and said, you are not the boss of me, right? I thought, okay. So I took the opportunity to explain it to her. I said, listen, you don't want to seed that idea at all in either the other person's mind or the people listening in their minds, because they'll immediately think, well, maybe she is the boss, right?
Right.
So I explained to her, just using some simple example, where her younger sister, about a month ago, brought a big thing of candy to school that she had bought at Walmart. And she was really happy, and she brought this big thing and wanted to share it with some friends. She put it in her bag, went out for recess, came back, it was gone. She came home crying. I don't think I've ever told you this.
No, you have not.
But she was really upset that someone stole this candy. And that story popped into my mind. I said to my daughter, my older daughter, who was in the car with me, I said, do you remember when this happened, when your sister got this thing stolen from her? Right. Okay. I want you to imagine that happened to somebody in your classroom, and you walked up to that kid and you said, hey, I just want you to know I did not steal your candy. What do you think that kid's going to think might have actually happened?
She's going to think, you stole my candy.
Exactly.
She's
so
attention
the
to it.
light bulb went off in her mind. She went, oh, you're right. So, Mike, this is for you now.
I didn't sacrifice babies to Satan.
What are the alternatives instead? We have some that we are going to talk about here, right? Really quick. What are some alternatives other than denying something?
Well, affirming the opposite, obviously.
Affirming the opposite. Yeah. So I feel very bad that your candy got stolen would be a nice thing to say to someone whose candy got stolen, right?
Yeah, if you really want to build rapport and you're a little kid and say, we should figure out who stole your candy and punch his lights out.
Exactly. Or if the kid's going, hey, you're not the boss of me, you're going to say, hey, you know what? I'm in control of my own behavior. I'm in control of myself.
I'm in control of me. Yeah.
Right, so you're stating the opposite. Another one is misdirecting or just ignoring.
Look at that bird on Mrs. Coulthard's roof.
Right. Yeah, so you just completely shift the conversation to a totally different area, which is your misdirect, or you ignore.
Or you say, but isn't the real issue here?
Yeah,
the
exactly.
candy's being stolen around the world.
Yeah, this gets into a rich area of discussion, right? For so many possibilities of context for humor, which kids need to mature a bit before they can really use the stuff. But I never did. I did teach my daughter the Jerry intervention.
Oh, nice.
And she told me on that car ride that her and a friend both know it and used it on another kid who was being particularly irritating, and just went up right to the kid and said, Jerry was so right about you.
It's fantastic.
And this kid got really upset, like, oh, Jerry who? And she just said, I think you know.
Yeah, now we've added another
Proud
one.
dad.
This is fantastic. It's brilliantly done.
Oh,
and
just like.
Was that Clem Estrada or Synecdoche who did that? Anyway, the other thing Chris and I have been working on lately, I came up with an idea. When I was a little kid, I hung out with this little boy called Mike Roach. And he's about a year or two younger than me. But for some reason, his nickname was Gibraltar.
Gibraltar.
I got a cough just
We'll edit that out. No.
We'll edit that out. So when someone is irritating, or if I just want to throw them off their game, I'll call them Gibraltar. Because, they're reminding me of Mike Roach. But they don't have the schema.
They have no context for it.
Which is the whole point. That's what makes it funny. They have no context for understanding it. So, someone irritates me. I'll say, why do you think people call you Gibraltar?
Right.
And who's calling me that? Right. Never mind. I think you know. Yeah. Just call somebody Gibraltar and watch what kind of results you get.
Yeah.
Or if
you
someone
just
says
just say,
it's sort of like, Jerry's so right about you. Look him in the eye and say, yeah, I'm sure you are. Gibraltar. Just meaningfully.
Raising what did you do with your face there when you said it? I'm sure you are.
Yeah, raising the eyebrows, raising your eyebrows, and invading the space. Gibraltar.
Right.
Fantastic, man.
Hopefully everybody
I love context-free humor. I really, really do.
I think just by listening to you say it that way, people can imagine
you'll know how to get the facial expression.
Yeah, it's quite good. So that's what we wanted to talk about.
It's really a good point. Teaching kids this stuff early is fabulous. They can be fully functioning clones of us.
Yeah,
now, Chris,
we should come up with a course on this.
What we need to come up... Yeah, of course. What we need is... Can we please have this podcast's Gus Grissom update?
Absolutely, Mike. There has been a verified Gus Grissom sighting. Wishona Teal reports that she was en route to Pembroke, Ontario for a family gathering. She stopped in at Kelly's restaurant in the town of Tweed for a sandwich. She noticed a familiar-looking man sitting in a corner booth by himself. She said, I saw Virgil Grissom sitting in a corner booth quietly sipping coffee. I recognized that brush cut. I walked over and asked him for an autograph. He said, I am not Gus Grissom, and stormed out of the restaurant. Teal later reported that Gus Grissom looked in good health, although he seemed a bit tired.
Unbelievable, Chris. I'm still trying to figure out why this man pretends to be dead. So send in your Gus Grissom sightings worldwide. We are going to track this man down and interview him on this program. You can send your Gus Grissom sightings to Gus Grissom, that's GRISSOM, at mailinator.com. Gus Grissom at mailinator.com. and we will put them on the air for you, and we're going to track this great astronaut down.
All right, so remember, check out MikeMandelHypnosis.com for details on Architecture of Hypnosis class, the one that's sold out in June, possibly waiting list space in case anyone cancels, and November 14th through 18th, along with all of our other live classes and our HypnoThoughts event that's going on in August. That's MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Thanks for listening to Brain Software. This has been podcast episode number 71 with Mike Mandel. And I'm Chris Thompson.
Mr. Thompson, have I ever told you the remarkable story about Dennis Bryce Morgan and the supply train?
No, you haven't.
It was quite an interesting one. I think you'll enjoy it. It was in the spring of 1917, so the war had been going on about 3 years, and the chaps were getting rather discouraged. I remember the extended front was happening, but do you know what that is?
No.
The extended front was when the trenches facing each other across France got longer and longer as each army tried to outflank each other. Finally, they stretched over most of the nation, became the extended front like a makeshift Maginot Line. Well, it had gone all the way down to Ponce de Lac, and the chaps were sitting there. Now, the problem was we were at the southern end of the trenches. It was getting deucedly difficult to get supplies in from London. Deucedly difficult. Damn thing. So what we really needed was iodine and bandages, and we needed a lot of ammunition and some Lee Enfield No. 4 rifles. And we put in a request through the quartermaster, but they kept sending us the wrong things. They'd send us things like fruitcakes and tins of sardines. I mean, if you want guns and ammunition, you're trying to deal with the bloody Germans. What are you going to do? Build a catapult and fire Christmas cakes at them? It's not going to work. So I was getting discouraged. I went to see the old Colonel Peter Fitzwadsworth Smythe and explained the situation to him. I said, we need ammunition and guns. I don't know how to get them. He said, well, listen, bud, I suppose you should go around and speak to Dennis Bryce Morgan. He's the scrounger around here and he's able to get things done. I thought, brilliant. So I went to Bryce Morgan's hut. Not much of a hut, really, just some bits of cardboard and brown paper, soaked in vinegar and stapled together and held with wire. I opened the front door, the most remarkable thing inside. You wouldn't believe it, Mr. Thompson. He had a full-functioning stone fireplace with a cozy log burning, a table set with linen and a chandelier, and a goose cooked on the table and some venison and even a bottle of Krug champagne and some Napoleon VSOP brandy, and he poured me a large glass. He said, what can I do for you, bud? I said, listen, Bryce Morgan, we've got to get some No. 4 rifles down here and some ammunition, but it's such a long trip. We don't know what to do. He said, give me 24 hours. I'll see what I can figure out. I thought, of course he will. Cleverest chap. I went back the next day. Bryce Morgan said, I've got your solution. Come on, we're going to the station. He had sent Morse code to London. The chap could do anything. He sat in the tent and got all the supplies coming in, but he brought them in on a disused railway line just west of us. And this enormous train pulled up, all luxury and 5-star. It was the Orient Express. He had it brought in from Istanbul through Paris for us. It was loaded with ammunition. And we didn't have anyone to unload it. He said, well, can you get someone? So I got Henry Squatter, which of course was the entire point. And he began unloading all the crates of ammunition, pulled a muscle in his back, and took all the rifles off. It took him nearly 18 hours to unload this enormous train. And he was exhausted. Bryce Morgan said, look, Squatter, old chap, I feel bad for you working so hard. Why don't you take a bit of a holiday? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, this is the Orient Express. It's going to go through Paris all the way to Istanbul. It's 5-star. Why don't you get on board and just have a nice meal and a good lie down in the stateroom, have about 10 days off. It'll come back this way, jump off at Paris, and I'll send a motorbike down with a sidecar. We'll pick you up. Oh, Squatter was thrilled about this. It got on the train. It started moving. Bryce Morgan pulled the engineer out of the cab and threw the railway lines on the points the other direction. It started going across the German minefield. A Squatter was screaming and hammering on the window. The funniest damn thing, when he hit the first mine, Bryce Morgan had filled the entire train with petrol. It went up with a massive fireball. Squatter was thrown over 200 feet in the air. He was 6 months in the hospital. Funniest damn thing. But Bryce Morgan, to celebrate, gave all of us some of his Krug champagne. He was just that sort of chap. So kind. Wonderful fellow. He'd do anything for you.